Mr. Franklin, how are you, sir? The subcommittee will come to order. Good morning. I'm excited to be here today for our second subcommittee markup in the 118th Congress. Today we are marking up 10 bills, several of which I will be asking for unanimous consent to consider en bloc. All of these bills have had a legislative hearing this Congress in the subcommittee. I am supportive of the bills on today's agenda, and I hope everyone will join me in supporting these bills today. In accordance with committee rules, the subcommittee has contacted the Congressional Budgeting Office seeking informal preliminary cost estimates for each of these bills being considered today. Many of these preliminary scores are only a range of potential costs because the subcommittee has still not received official cost estimates on the bills from the Congressional Budget Office. None of these bills today include the offsets that will be necessary to move the bills forward. However, we will need to find offsets to ensure that these are not increasing the debt and the burden for the American taxpayers. If we cannot find an offset for a bill, we will not be able to consider it in full committee markup. I look forward to working with Ranking Member Pappas and the other members of the subcommittee to find reasonable offsets for these important proposals. I am proud of the bipartisan work this subcommittee continues to do, and I believe these bills that we are considering today will truly reflect this process. One of the bills that we are considering is H.R. 5890, the review of every Veterans Claim Act, which would prevent VA from denying certain types of claims solely because a veteran misses one VA exam. This is important because no veteran who has been pursuing their VA claim for the years have to start over because they missed one exam. I have a second bill as well, 5891, the Veteran Appeals Decision Clarity Act, which would require the VA Board of Veterans Appeals to notify the veterans of the evidence that the board did not consider when making a decision on a veteran's claim. The bill would also require the board to explicitly state in its decision which appeal form successfully started an appeal and which did not. This bill is important because it would allow veterans to make informed decisions on how they want to continue their claim, and it would ensure that the board would be held accountable for incorrectly rejecting a veteran's appeal. I hope that the members of the subcommittee can support the efforts to improve the VA claims process by voting for the legislation. I look forward to working with Ranking Member Pappas on this bill and other bills being marked up today to ensure that we are doing what's right for our veterans. I now recognize the Ranking Member for his opening remarks.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Luttrell. I really appreciate you holding this markup today, and I want to say how much I appreciate the bipartisan nature of the work that led up to today's markup. I know there's still some disagreement about the scope and cost of a few of these bills, but I'm confident that we can continue to work together to address those issues and deliver the best legislation possible to our nation's veterans. So with that, I want to thank you and your staff, Mr. Chairman, for working together with us on these bills. I look forward to seeing these advance in the full committee and through the House, and I yield back my time.
Thank you, Mr. Pappas. I now ask unanimous consent to consider en bloc H.R. 4016 and the following bills that have an amendment in the nature of a substitute: H.R. 3790, H.R. 5938, and H.R. 4190. Hearing no objection, so ordered. The clerk shall report the bill.
H.R. 4016.
The bills were circulated in advance pursuant to committee rules. I ask that the reading of bills be dispensed with and the bills be open to amendment at any point. Without objection, so ordered. Does any member wish to speak on any of the bills?
I'm sorry.
Ranking Member, Mr. Self, you recognized?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Out of respect for you and the process here, I'm going to be voting for these bills in subcommittee. However, I want to just reemphasize what you said, that unless we find offsets here in the full committee hearing, this will be problematic for me. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Self. I recognize myself for a moment to say that these bills would, in excess, expand access to disability exams for rural and underserved veterans, increase access to benefits for serving spouses of veterans who suffered from ALS, and improve the VA fiduciary program's repayment of misused funds. I'm supportive of all these important bills and encourage my colleagues to join me. Do any other members wish to comment on the en bloc? Mr. Pappas, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to say how much I appreciate the bills from Representatives Trone, Slotkin, and Connolly being included in this en bloc. These bills will each bring much-needed relief to veterans and their families. I'm especially pleased to see Representative Slotkin's H.R. 3790, the Justice for ALS Veterans Act, included. We know that ALS is such a devastating and rapidly progressing disease, and families of these veterans deserve our support. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Pappas. There are amendments in the nature of a substitute to 3 of these bills, which will be considered base text for purpose of markup. Without objection, so ordered. Does any member wish to offer an amendment to either the bill or any of the amendments in the nature of a substitute? Hearing none, the question now occurs on agreeing to the amendments in the nature of a substitute, including the en bloc. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. I'll now recognize Mr. Pappas for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that en bloc number 1, consisting of H.R. 4016, the ANS to H.R. 3790, the ANS to H.R. 5938, and the ANS to H.R. 4190, be reported favorably to the full committee.
There is a motion to favorably forward all the bills included in the en bloc, including the bills as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the bills as amended are favorably forwarded to the full committee. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. I now ask unanimous consent to consider en bloc H.R. 5890 and the following bills that have an amendment in the nature of a substitute: H.R. 5559, H.R. 5870, and H.R. 5891. Hearing no objection, so ordered, the clerk shall report the bills.
H.R. 5890.
The bills were circulated in advance pursuant to the committee rules. I ask that the reading of the bills be dispensed with and the bills be open to amendment at any point without objection. So ordered. I recognize myself for a moment to say that these bills would improve VA appeals process by building on the accomplishments of the Veteran Appeals Improvement and Modernization Act of 2017 and increase accountability and transparency for the VA Board of Veterans Appeals. I'm supportive of these bills and encourage my colleagues to do the same. Do any members wish to comment on the bills included in the en bloc? There are no amendments in the nature of the substitute of the 3 of these bills that will be considered base text for purpose of markup without objection. So ordered. Does any member wish to offer an amendment to the bill or any of the amendments in the nature of a substitute? Hearing none, the question now occurs on agreeing to the amendment in the nature of a substitute, including in the en bloc. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. I'll now recognize Mr. Pappas for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that en bloc number 2, consisting of the ANS to H.R. 5559, the ANS to H.R. 5870, H.R. 5890, and the ANS to H.R. 5891, be reported favorably to the full committee.
Thank you, Mr. Pappas. There is a motion to favorably forward all the bills included in the en bloc, including the bills as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the bills as amended are favorably forwarded to the full committee. I now call up H.R. 1753, the JAX Act. The clerk shall report the bill.
H.R. 1753. To ensure that certain
The bill was circulated in advance pursuant to the committee rules without objection. The first reading is dispensed with, and the bill is open for amendment at any point. Hearing no objection, I recognize myself for a brief moment to comment on these bills. H.R. 1753 would recognize members of the Female Cultural Support Team's services and allow them to get properly evaluated for their disability claim. This is a long overdue change, and I thank Mr. Issa for leadership on this bill. Do any members wish to comment on H.R. 1753? I recognize Mr. Pappas to offer an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk shall report the amendment.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 1753.
I ask unanimous consent that further readings of the amendment be dispensed with. Hearing no objection, so ordered. Ranking Member Pappas is now recognized for 3 minutes to speak in support of his amendment, H.R. 1753.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me first say that I appreciate Representative Issa offering this much-needed bill. The women who served on these cultural support teams, female engagement teams, lioness teams, and others are well past due for this recognition. They face the same hardships and dangers as their male colleagues and suffered the same fates. And were it not for our nation's legacy of gender discrimination and the short-sighted prohibitions on women serving in combat roles, they would have already been granted the health care and benefits that they deserve. But alas, that's not the case. We find ourselves here today discussing a bill to finally pull their service into the light and recognize them as the warriors that they are. Unfortunately, though, the bill before us today leaves many of these women behind. In fact, it's exceptionally narrow. It benefits only a few hundred veterans, and we know that there are many more out there who are just as deserving, dating all the way back to the first Gulf War. That's why I'm pleased to offer this amendment today to expand the reach of the JAX Act beyond its current narrow scope. Mr. Chairman, this amendment is simple. It would extend the bill's reach back in time to 2003 and the beginnings of the global war on terror, when we know that many servicewomen were serving in this capacity, mostly on an informal basis. It's because of the informal nature of these roles that women were playing that we don't have a great sense of the number of that cohort. To that end, I appreciate the additional language in the bill that would force DoD and VA to work together to identify the population more fully. But, Mr. Chairman, my argument to you and our colleagues here is that the number is inconsequential. If it's 1, if it's 100 or 1,000, these service women risked all for this nation, and they deserve access to VA healthcare and benefits just the same. So I urge my colleagues to support this amendment to show these women that we won't let costs get in the way of honoring their service to this great nation, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman for his amendment. I do appreciate the ranking member's work to support our women veterans, and I want to myself honor their service and ensure that they receive their benefits that they have absolutely earned. However, I still have concerns that we do not have the concrete data from the VA about the population affected, and we will also do not have any estimate from the CBA on the budgetary effect. For those reasons, I will not be supporting this amendment. Do any other members wish to comment on Mr. Pappas's amendment, H.R. 1753?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Ms. Ramirez, Ms. Ramirez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Latrell and Ranking Member Pappas. I am pleased to offer an amendment to the amendment the nature of a substitute to H.R. 1753.
Ms. Ramirez,
Yeah.
1 second. Ms. Ramirez, will you suspend so we can vote on the current amendment?
So well.
Thank you. Hearing none, the question now occurs on the Pappas amendment of H.R. 1753. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. I now recognize Ms. Ramirez to offer an amendment.
I'm trying to get ahead of you.
That's absolutely.
So, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Pappas, I have an amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 1753, the JACS Act. As you've heard from the Ranking Member, the JACS Act takes a critical step in recognizing women veterans for their service. And as a member of this committee, and the only woman in this committee, ensuring that our women in uniform are recognized for their contributions and sacrifices and have full access to their benefits is certainly a priority for me. That is why I'm proud to offer my amendment that would direct the Department of Veteran Affairs to submit a report regarding gender disparities in covered claims for traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, particularly among those who have engaged in combat since 1990. This report will be incredibly important in identifying at what rates women have their claim been denied in spite of the injury being connected or exacerbated by hostile engagement. Data collection is a powerful tool that can help this committee and the VA identify the gaps and challenges our women veterans face when submitting their claims. We have to continue to advocate for our veterans, including our women veterans, and this is why I'm introducing this amendment. Thank you, Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Ramirez. The clerk shall report the amendment.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to
I
H.R.
ask unanimous consent that the further readings of the amendment be dispensed with. Hearing no objection, so ordered. Ms. Ramirez is now recognized. I thank Ms. Ramirez for her amendment, and I support it. Do any members wish to comment on Ms. Ramirez's amendment, H.R. 1753? Hearing none, the question now occurs on the Ramirez amendment of H.R. 1753. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Without objection, no motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The other amendments were filed. Are there any other further amendments? Hearing none, I now recognize Mr. Pappas for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 1753 as amended be reported favorably to the full committee.
There is a motion to favorably forward H.R. 1753 as amended. All those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and H.R. 1753 as amended is favorably forwarded to the full committee. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. I now call up H.R. 4306, the Michael Lekic Military Firefighter Protection Act. The clerk shall report the bill.
H.R. 4306, to amend Title 38.
The bill was circulated in advance pursuant to the committee rules. Without objection, the first reading is dispensed with, and the bill is open for amendment at any point. Hearing no objection, so ordered. I am supportive of the intent of this bill because I do believe it is necessary to establish presumptions for our military firefighters who develop conditions as a result of their service. However, the incredibly high cost of this bill is concerning. I look forward to working with the ranking member and other members of the subcommittee to work to lower the cost of the bill and fully offset it further. Do any members wish to comment on H.R. 4306?
Mr. Chairman, does that include the amendment?
Yes, it does.
Yes, sir, please. Mr. Chairman, I would comment on one section E, capable of demonstrating other sufficient cause. I believe that when we have a list of presumptive conditions, it needs to be an exact list of presumptive conditions, or otherwise we have no control over what the department would do. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, sir. I recognize the ranking member to offer an amendment.
Sure. I have an amendment at the desk, Mr. Chairman.
The clerk shall report the amendment.
Amendment to H.R. 4306, offered by Mr. Pappas of New Hampshire.
I ask unanimous consent that further readings of the amendment be dispensed with. Hearing no objection, so ordered. Ranking Member Pappas is now recognized for 3 minutes to speak in support of his amendment, H.R. 4306.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firefighting is an inherently dangerous profession. The risks of racing through traffic at high speed and then rushing headlong into burning buildings, they're obvious to us all. But firefighters train hard for this and usually escape unscathed from flame and falling rafters. But what firefighters can't always train for and can't always escape are the deadly toxic chemicals that they use daily to aid their work. This category of cancer-causing chemicals, collectively called PFAS or forever chemicals, are ubiquitous. They are in nearly everyone's water supply. Nearly everyone has some level of exposure to them. But, Mr. Chairman, that exposure is more acute with firefighters. They use these chemicals every day. They're in firefighting foams. They're in their turnout gear. And it's why Congress chose to address exposure for federal civilian firefighters last year with the Federal Firefighters Fairness Act. But military firefighters were left out of that bill. So I'm pleased that Representative Spanberger has seen fit to try to correct that inequity. But that doesn't come without cost. Treatment for the cancers covered in this bill will be expensive. But it's necessary that we cover them, and it's what we owe these veterans for their service. In an effort to mitigate the budgetary impact, this amendment will use the precedent set by the PACT Act, which will phase in the listed conditions over several years. Like the PACT Act, it makes exceptions for veterans who are terminally ill, elderly, or homeless. It also allows the Secretary to accelerate that phase-in if conditions allow. Just like with the PACT Act, that's what this is modeled after. Certainly, it's open for further discussion as we bring this to the full committee, but this is our best attempt to try to set up a framework that will help us begin to move forward and address this inequity for our military firefighters. So I encourage everyone on this committee to support this amendment and the underlying bill, and I yield back.
Thank you, sir. I greatly appreciate the ranking member's amendment. I have concerns about the budget that would push the scoring outside the CBO's 10-year window. This would change the CBO scores, how this bill and allows it to come in at a lower cost. So though CBO changed their estimate, this does not change the cost of the American taxpayer. I look forward to working with the ranking member on other ways to bring down the burden on the taxpayer while still taking care of our military firefighters. Do any other members wish to comment on the amendment for H.R. 4306? Hearing none, the question now occurs on agreeing to Ranking Member Pappas' Amendment 4306. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. I now recognize Mr. Pappas for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that H.R. 4306 as amended be reported favorably to the full committee.
There is a motion to favorably forward 4306. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. H.R. 4306 is amended favorably forward to the full committee. Without objection, the motion is to be reconsidered. Without objection, the motion is to reconsider is laid upon the table. I now recognize Mr. Subcommittee to comment on his bill.
Thank you, Chairman Luttrell, for yielding time for me to, and for your leadership on this committee as well. Thank you, sir, and for your service. With over 70,000 veterans calling my district home, I take my duty to advocate for legislative solutions on their behalf very seriously. I am proud of the work we have done this Congress, passing legislation to improve veterans' appeals backlogs and increasing availability for care for veterans in rural areas that I have quite a bit of in my district, so that no matter where they live, they receive timely access to the care they fought for and they deserve. Today, we will build upon this momentum by marking up, and I know we've voted on and hopefully passing out of the full committee, my bipartisan bill, H.R. 5938, the Veterans Expansion Act. This bill will expand the pool of available providers eligible to cross state lines when conducting disability exams for veterans and to institute greater transparency in the department's use of its crucial authority. Since the pandemic, the VA has increasingly relied upon VBA contracted examiners Now, this bill, as amended, will leverage this trend and extend license portability authority to a larger pool of practitioners, including podiatrists, dentists, and optometrists as well. Those who risk life and limb deserve the respect and care they were promised. And I'm honored to work every day on bipartisan policies like this to facilitate tangible benefits for our veterans. It is critical that we as Congress, the VA, and their providers meet our veterans where they are, regardless of state lines. I was proud to introduce this common sense bipartisan solution, and I urge all my colleagues to support, and I thank them for their support on this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank you, sir. I ask unanimous consent that the committee staff be authorized to make technical, clerical, and conforming changes to the bills favorably forwarded today. Hearing no objections, so ordered. I thank the members for their attendance today, and the subcommittee is adjourned.